Rev up your engines!
Well, if you know automakers like I do, they're always out to make a buck. Well, now it turns out that they're trying to screw all the consumers out of the equity in their leases. There's quite a few automakers now, and they're restricting the ability to use this current market where prices is up to make money on your lease. So what some people are doing is, if you have a leased car, then you can make money by selling it to a dealer who doesn't use your brand, a different one, and make money. Honda and Acura is the latest one who said, you can't do this anymore. How it works is like, say you're leasing a car for 30 grand, and the residual value of the lease is $20,000 after 3 years. When you reach the end of this lease, you'd have the option of turn it in or purchase it for the residual amount. And with the prices going up, it turns out that the residual amount is actually quite higher. But now since dealers are paying higher for trade-in values because there's a dearth of the market, the residual value could be a lot more. You could lease it and then sell it to a dealer and make money. And so far, Honda Acura, General Motors, and Nissan Infiniti are restricting this third-party lease buyout. They're not allowing you to do this. Honda gives a reason. They say, our goal is to make sure our dealers have access to quality pre-owned Honda and Acura dealers. So they want to make sure their guys have cars to sell used in their brand. And if they're selling them to other places to give more money, they won't. Now, of course, legally you can do it, because if you're leasing a car from a company, you don't own it. The company owns it, and you're basically renting the car from them. So basically, they can really do whatever they want. They used to allow you to sell it to anybody when you're done, but now they're not. Of course, you got to think. If you don't own something, you're at the beck and call of whoever does. They're the ones who actually own it. If you have a house and you are paying a mortgage, the bank owns the house, not you. So they want to change the rules. They go around changing them. They're the ones that actually own the vehicle. You lease a vehicle, you don't own it. So they could do whatever they wanted. But now they're stopping people from being able to sell it at the end of the lease to a different manufacturer to try to make a profit. Normally, no one even cares because there's plenty of used cars and you don't really make a profit. But now with the prices up for a short time, you could actually get the lease car you lease, sell it to somebody else and make a little bit of profit. Then you could say, well, they're saying your buyout's 20, and if they give you 26, then you made $6,000. But they're saying you can only do that with their own dealers. You can't go anywhere and price around. And of course, their own dealers aren't going to offer you more than the buyout because they know that they can only sell it to them. They can't sell it to somebody else. So that's just kind of nitpicking here. But I mean, legally, they have the right to do it because you don't own the car. They do. You're leasing it from them. I'm not a fan of leasing anyways. There's another reason not to get a lease on a car, but to buy it instead. So you actually own it. Then you can do whatever you want. Dark Knight. Scotty, any advice for buying a Ford F-150 2013 four-wheel drive all V8 engine that has 120,000 miles? Check the transmission. That's the weakest point. Those are very well-made vehicles. So it's the V8. Now, you don't want to buy the V6, dual turbos, and the GDI. Those have problems, but the V8s are very good. Just make sure the transmission works, especially since it's four-wheel drive. Road test it and have a mechanic check it before you buy. Best Laptop PSN said, Scotty, are there any preventative maintenance you can do for electronics? Well, I'm sure you're talking about cars, right? The main thing is make sure you got a good battery, the terminals are clean, and your alternator's working. You can get them tested free at any auto parts store to have them checked once in a while. Because like say your battery's getting weak, the car will still start, but then that strains the alternator to charge it, and the alternator will wear out. It costs a lot of money. If the alternator is weak, then all the electrical system has to work harder, and other parts can wear out, like ignition coils, things like that. The main thing is to make sure your battery's good, the connectors are clean, and your alternator's working fine. Check it every once in a while. Of course, you got a drive belt, the fan belt that runs the alternator. Check that. If it's all cracked up, buy a new one before it breaks and you get stranded somewhere. Alex said, my dad has a 93 4Runner. When we turn on the AC, the temperature increases. What do you think's the problem? Okay, it's only one of two things. You turn on your AC and your temperature gauge goes a little higher. There's two cooling fans on your radiator. Make sure they're both working. If one of them is broken, fix it. Then it'll go back to normal. The other thing is, if your radiator's just wearing out, it'll do that. Modern radiators are plastic top and bottom, and the middle is an aluminum core. The aluminum doesn't rust, but internally it corrodes and then it can't dissipate heat. So if you find both those cooling fans are working, but you turn the AC on and it starts running hotter, it means it's time to put a new radiator in. You don't have to buy a dealer one. I buy the Chinese-made ones all the time for Toyotas. They work perfectly fine. They do wear out over time. They corrode inside. You can't see it. The Let Wild Force says, Scotty, why in most modern cars when the taillight goes bad, you have to replace the whole taillight assembly? Well, most aren't actually like that. The problem is, a lot of them are made so that you have to take the taillight assembly out of the car, then you can get the bulbs out. Years ago when I was a young mechanic, it was a lot easier. You just open the trunk and the sockets are right there. You didn't have to do anything but take the socket out, put a bulb in. Now you got to take the whole thing apart. But if you're talking about some of the ultra-modern ones, are using LEDs, and a lot of them are in assembly, where the LEDs are built into the taillight assembly and you can buy the whole thing. And of course, that's just planned obsolescence so they can rip you off and sell you expensive parts when they do go bad. That's just the modern rip everyone off, make it a unit. Oh, look, it's efficient. It's all one unit. And then when it breaks, you can't replace parts. You got to buy the whole expensive thing. Don't blame me on that one. Jacob New Chassis says, is Mazda doing anything right today? How are they? I was looking at newer models. Well, actually, they're one of the few companies that actually seems to be making better cars. They've got a deal going with Toyota that they're making Mazdas and Toyotas on the same assembly line at a factory in Alabama. Toyota, I believe, owns something like 20% of Mazda, and they really are a much better company than they used to be. They make excellent cars now. They no longer use the crappy Jatco automatic transmissions. They manufacture their own, and they make some pretty good cars. The new ones are good cars. A lot better than they used to be. Rudy Gatz says, how can I prevent stone chips on my hood when highway driving? Don't drive in the country. Okay, a lot of people don't like them because they're ugly, but you can get those windscreens that you can put on the bottom of the front of your hood, like plexiglass, right? They have them different colors now. And then that keeps the rock chips from hitting because they'll hit that screen. If it's a big rock, it might crack the screen, but it won't chip the paint on your car. And of course, you remember years ago, I don't know how old you are, maybe you don't remember, they actually had a lot of car bras. And they were like neoprene rubber in different colors. And you put them on the front of the car. And of course, the neoprene bra kept the hood from chipping. But then again, you're driving around with a car that's got a bra on it. It looks kind of stupid. Plus, the paint under the bra won't fade as much as the other paint that's not under the bra. And when you take the bra off, it'll look like a person where they're tan, but where they had the bra on, it's not tan there. So your car will kind of look like a bikini girl when you take the bra off if you do it for years. Mr. Arcade Con says, Scotty, what's the highest mileage Toyota Corolla you've ever seen? Well, the highest one I've ever personally seen myself was 550,000 miles, but I've read about them that had 1.5 million, 2 million miles on them, and you take care of them, they can last a really long time. But I had a customer in Houston had 550,000 miles on his, and it was still running pretty good. Paint was all faded away, but the car still ran good. Agved says, great, Scotty, can a turbocharged non-GDI gasoline car be reliable if the engine is well built and doesn't have inherent known problems? Yes. Take the first cars Honda ever sold. They sold an Acura that was turbocharged. I got customers with them and they still run perfectly fine. They were non-GDI turbocharged cars. Honda makes excellent engines, and their turbocharged engines last. It's the problem that they have is that 1.5 turbo GDI one that they're putting in some of the cars had an oil dilution problem because they put turbocharging and GDI, and that's a lot more pressure, a lot more things can go wrong. But a regular turbocharger on a well-built Honda engine can last a long time. The one they made have lasted. Truthfully, I've never seen a turbo go bad on any of my customers' Hondas. So, I mean, it says something. Celine says, Scotty, I got a 2017 Mustang GT. It only has 13,000 miles. When it rains hard, water seeps on the passenger side. All right. If it's just rain and not when you turn the AC on, turning the AC on, the evaporator is going to leak. And then that's the evaporator. Drain hose is clogged. So you might clean that out anyways, the evaporator drain hose. On one side, you might not know when it rains, water goes all on your car and it comes down the windshield. Then there are little channels. They're like little canals. And they take the water and they divert them to the inside of the fenders where they go out and under the car. Those can fill up with leaves. And when they do, the little channels get a dam, just like a beaver dam, and the water fills over and spills inside the car. That's a very common thing. Look for leaves and clogged drains. Like you can often get pressured air and hose them, and then the air will blow them out, and you'll see little leaves. And sometimes you got to go under the car in the fenders. You'll see inside there's drain holes. They might be clogged. You can get metal rods or any kind of thin metal pieces, stick them in there, and try to break them out so the leaf pieces break and then fall out. And if you park under trees, stop doing that. Then it'll stop from happening again. Oh, Johnny Gallard says, our Nissan Maxima is really that bad. I got a 2012 Maxima S. vehicles. Well, no, they aren't. Actually, the Maximas are probably one of the better vehicles that they make. Of course, they're not selling that many of them because everybody wants SUVs now. Those 6-cylinder engines, they have CVT automatic transmissions in most of them, the CVTs. But they're pretty reliable. It's the 4-cylinder Nissans that have the crappy CVTs. So the Maximas aren't that bad. Now, they're not as good as they were 15, 20 years ago, but that's still one of the better cars that Nissan makes. Still, on a whole, I'd rather get a V6 Toyota Camry that would run probably 2 to 3 times as long as the Maxima. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.